Okay. Trying to fix this so it looks like a V-neck. Okay, it doesn't look like a V-neck.
We're giving different looks.
We're giving different. I'm giving like college dorm realness. I'm giving like I'm going to a party in the quad later, and it's gonna be super awesome. But I'm also giving you that blonde lady in Gossip Girl who was black. I feel like I'm giving Muppet realness though in ways. I feel like I'm giving like that blonde Muppet who like always looks like she's not looking at anybody. She's just like mad happy for no reason. So this morning, Jody and I were talking about the U.S. In terms of a house. And I think like in ways I want to be transparent about like borrowing from like Bell Hooks' Global Plantation, because I feel like in ways when we talk about the global plantation, we kind of get lost and we don't hold accountable the U.S. in ways for the dominating ways in which you know, they've kind of, you know, have kind of perpetuated anti-blackness in such a way, in such a very unique way, especially to a black American such as myself, and speaking, and even calling myself a black American is problematic to me because I don't super feel like, I feel like that speaks to the larger issue of the dual consciousness, and I'm going to get into what I mean about the U.S. in terms of like it being a house in a second. But what I mean by dual consciousness is when I go out of my house, obviously when I see my neighbors, I can, you know, I can assess that like the neighborhood has been heavily gentrified. And it wouldn't be a wrong thing for me to want to engage with my neighbors about the ways in which they're gentrifiers and I'm also a gentrifier, and in ways in which we as gentrifiers, outside of like the racial implications of that, but as gentrifiers can like, you know, also like be, you know, aiding and helping the community in actual ways, and not just saying by raising the property taxes, because that really doesn't help the community. If anything, that impedes the community from actually lifting up. And what it does is it crushes the community below the heels of like capitalism and whiteness, to the point where, you know, you'll walk down a street that was heavily populated by black families and it no longer is that way. And it's just not going to be that way anymore, simply because of the way that the city has been implicated since, you know, post-Katrina and also post, quote-unquote, emancipation. So I guess, like, in ways I haven't super fleshed out the whole house, but I want to say that when I talk about the U.S. being a house, and when Jody shared about them being an immigrant, and sharing about them being someone who, as a child, watched shows on television, such as Step by Step, and really just kind of was indoctrinated with this idea of imperialism that seemed accessible, and it also seemed very mobile. And it seemed very easy breezy.
And it seemed easy breezy and fluffy and fun, you know? And it's like, I'm in Jamaica, my mom's in America, and my mom asks a 7-year-old, you know, black child in Jamaica, do you want to go to America? Am I going to say no? Do you want to move with me to America? The America that I've watched in Disney movies, the America that I've watched in cartoon shows and you know, fun, light, 30-minute sitcoms. Of course I did.
And see, and you know, it also makes me think of, in ways, and like kind of getting off track, of like the stories of immigration to America and like what we're given. And I feel like one of the most popular stories in my childhood was Fievel the Mouse, which was a Jewish mouse who was trying to escape Russia and escape, you know, you know, not quite imperialism, but the very tyrannical regime of Adolf Hitler. And, you know, they coded it for children, and they coded it in such a way so that it looked like, you know, of course mice are afraid of cats, but making cats the stand-in for Nazis, for killers, for rapists, for people who were fucking evil as fuck. And by playing it as a cat and a mouse, it seems normalized. It seems almost like, of course it's like this. But the metaphor was something bigger. And I feel like, again, I want to stress, you know, this is, I'm going to go back to the dual consciousness thing, but this is part of the indoctrination for children to think of the U.S. as a promised land, to think of the U.S., to think of their homeland as a homeland, despite the fact that the very white people that stand on this foundation have not been here for as long as they purport to be, and have actually been enslavers and masters for a lot longer than they want to realize, recognize, and admit to, and trying to change. It's hard enough to speak about this shit with another person of color, let alone a white person, because it seems like these white people are not willing to realize the historical implications of enslavement and the historical implications of this house, which is colonization. And as I was saying, with dual consciousness, just to tie up that thought, when I come out of my house and I see these white gentrifiers, obviously in ways I see myself implicated as being also a gentrifier in ways. However, that's seemingly ahistorical, because despite the fact that like a history and a legacy of enslavement is attached to people like myself and other people who are black and other people who are people of color, there is also a history of migration. There's also a history of actual mobility for POC that has again been peppered and fucked over by colonialism. When black folks were quote unquote emancipated, when I talk about the US being a house, that is the time when niggas in the house stopped doing for the house because it fed them. And I'm saying like in ways, like enslaved Africans were inside of the United States house and were not ever actually inside. They were standing by the door to take a coat. They were standing at the stairs to help somebody down.
Standing at the kitchen
to cook a meal.
Making a luxurious, multi-course meal.
Exactly. And to be real with you, the house that I talk about sits on the backs and the bones of indigenous folks. So already this house has already been implicated as a horrible, terrible, fucked up place to be. There's no changing that history. Indigenous folks were here. White people decided that wasn't cool. That wasn't fair. That wasn't manifest motherfucking destiny. They decided that it was time for the white man to fucking spawn and create this host, this plague of more white folks who were increasingly, as the years prevailed, less and less interested in the plight of the Negro. Because you hear these good white people in the 12 Years a Slave and all these slave movies. You see all these abolitionist white folks, these white folks that want to talk about the house. But they don't really. The thing is, white folks will never implicate the house because they stole the land around it. They're not going to talk about the house. They're going to talk about what's going on inside of the fucking house. And that's what the focus becomes. So once that house is built on the backs of indigenous folks by folks who are indigenous to another place, like you have so much labor going on and white folks aren't doing shit but sitting back and beating people if they should dare fucking say anything about how the fuck the house is being built. But the house was being built over the bodies of indigenous folks with bodies of other indigenous folks from a different land. So when they're building this house, when these enslaved Africans are here and have no choice but to build this house, they start to see the fucking house for what the fuck it is, a house. They start to say, you know what? It is on the backs of the bones of the people that was here first. But we wasn't here first neither. And I feel like that's part of that dual consciousness tip shit. It's like, I feel like the niggas that was building the house, that was building the U.S., started to see themselves as equal to a white person because they helped build the shit that the white person is staying inside of. And it's something that also ties into another thing I said. I said to a black man, I said, if you get arrested and there's a bunch of white people with you and nobody else gets arrested but you, and I said, would you talk about that with white people? And they said, yeah, because we shared that experience. But the thing is, what experience did that person share with you? The fear of being stopped by the police. But the trauma and the pain continued on in you. The trauma and the pain perpetuates with you because you know you're being singled out. You know that your body is a signifier for someone to want to stop and impede. So, with that said, as black folks, as indigenous folks, because not all the indigenous folks were being built on top of. Some of them were also helping build the house. But as that was happening, they're forgetting that their brothers, that their sisters, that their family, that their siblings, not to be cissexist, to see people that you are linked to by struggle. No longer do you see them because you built this beautiful house on top of their bodies, on top of their life, on top of their nation. And that's what I'm saying. The United States is a big, fat ass house that looks so goddamn nice on the outside. It's the type of house that you think you seen when you was in Jamaica, when you was watching your shows. Oh goddamn. And that's another thing about media and about how we're shown able-bodied, cis, white, heteronormative ass folks every goddamn day having the same motherfucking plight. Oh, they spelled my name wrong at Starbucks. It's Brittany with an I. How is that fucking on par? How is that fucking on par at all? But we talk about, you know, the media representation and how we see ourselves. And when black folks constantly see themselves playing maid number 2, inmate number 5, random black banshee on the corner number what the fuck ever, it starts to be ingrained in us that these are our lanes, that these are our uses in the house. Okay? As black folks, we were building the house. We were labor. We were free labor. We were held up higher than we're held today, and we were still just being commodified. That's that positive objectification. We were seen as shit, but we were shit that got shit done, and that's what it was. Black folks were most valued during slavery because we were not people, because we were pieces of the house, because we were furniture, because we were cooks and maids and fucking soothers, jesters, we were apothecaries, we were so many different things. The history of blackness does not at all start when this house was built, nor did it start when we came to this motherfucker in chains. The history of blackness is so much bigger than that. However, once they had us building the house, we felt like we was a part of some real shit. And I feel like that's also implicated by capitalism. Once we realized people are paying money for us, we are worth, that was our worth. It's how much our master might have paid for us, how much we were worth to our master, how much work we were having to do. You know what I mean? So it's like once we establish that we are currency, once as enslaved folks, we exhibit or examine the ways in which our ancestors were used as furniture, were used as the couch, the bed, the maid, and the chef. When we examine those things, we cannot be ahistorical about anything else. And I feel like that's what is impeding things, is people want to talk about things out of context with history.
Can we get into hurt white feelings and how to decenter white feelings, how to decenter white opinions, how to decenter white values, how to decenter white history? Because I think when you're talking about the ways in which people just look at shit just ahistorical, you know, like, you know, black people shooting black people, you know, black parents abusing black children, black parents neglecting black children, all of this hurt and trauma that people love to examine, because you're either looking at noble, virtuous white people and maybe their troubles with their boss or their little fun lives, their fun families with maybe a hiccup here or there. And that's what sitcoms are based on, you know? White life, white society with some quirky, silly things popping off. And that's like the arch of the story. But it's like you're either looking at white people succeeding and being force-fed in this seemingly silent, insidious way that this is what you want to be, or when you're looking at black people, you're looking at why black people just can't act right. Unless you're looking at a groomed and polished Negro that has bought into the fallacy that they're standing side by side with the descendants of enslavers and that they have a stake in this house that is sitting on top of lands that do not belong to these people, do not belong to the descendants of enslavers and colonizers. Once you check out of that primed and polished, squeaky clean Negro who's trying to be a mammy, who's trying to be a fixer, and not to shame black people who buy into that, because that's trauma if you still believe that you have any stakes, you are entangled with white people in any fruits or benefits of this society. But hurt white feelings as derailment from people being able to sit with continuing legacies. Because when we talk about colonization or enslavement, it's not something that ended. You know, we were talking about emancipation and how you were making a reference that essentially, you know, Lincoln, you know, you have this movie with people playing Lincoln, and again, white feelings is all about white feelings. It's not about, you know, what black folks did. It's not about how black folks fought or struggled or schemed to, you know, aid in their liberation, but it's about this one white man who freed a bunch of slaves. And you were saying essentially that was strategy. That was, let's free some slaves, and it wasn't all the slaves.
Oh, hell no.
It was the slaves that were in the Confederacy. Let's free some slaves.
They were moving niggas west. They was moving niggas west as this shit was happening.
Let's free some slaves. So let's hand them some guns so that they can fight to what? To continue holding the Union together. To still continue that labor of making repairs on the house, of fixing the house, of bettering the house that never will belong to black people, and a house that is sitting on top of stolen land as the project of genocide continues unfolding. It's not like people talk about indigenous, like First Nations folks as if, oh shit, genocide was fucked up. Like it's done. It's not done. As the United States of America still continues to stand, it is still an ongoing project. So hurt my feelings, just fucking derailing.
Yes.
And that's the point that I want to get to of fucking folks of color not fucking fighting, not fucking picking up the gun, picking up the spear to fight for white people, to fight for whiteness, to fight for white society, to fight for some scraps of a society that you will never ever be able to be fucking incorporated into because it was never meant for you.
It was not meant for you.
And why would we want a part of something if the price of admission into that is erasure of history? The price is assimilation. What labor should you or I or any person continue to perform to continue fixing and upholding this wretched house when we're already back old? I was already old from when I came out the womb. My mama was old. Her mama was old. Y'all owe me. What you want me to do? Why you want me to continue working for something that's never gonna be mine when y'all still owe me, but you wanna act like you're cutting me a deal by saying, oh, hey, Jody, hey, Tatiana, hey, this person, hey, that person, come, you know, get your degree, you know, buy your house, fight in the military, join in, opt into all of these different facets of white civil society, and you will get some scraps. You will get some leftovers.
Exactly. And I think, unfortunately, like, us feeling this way is very much like, it's not just that we're black, we're also black female assumed people. So it's like, we've been the main mammies